The classic running start. That can only mean one thing. Welcome to Le Mans on two wheels, something a little bit different this time. And it's really wet and very slick as we'll try to find our way into the first corner, into Dunlop curve, up to the Dunlop chicane, down a few gears. And just nice and easy, get it in here, try to find a spot. Squeeze the throttle on the exit underneath the Dunlop bridge and funnel on down into a long right-hander. We'll sweep to the right here and head on to the Grand Prix course, the Bugatti course. Oh, they use for motorcycle racing, so just nick the bike in front. They don't want to be doing that. And head up now to Museum Corner. It's a long left-handed corner. There's a lot of long sweeping corners on this course. Not liked so much for the car racing, but I think it's a great course for bikes. They run the MotoGP here, and they also run this endurance bike racing, although you could hardly call this one endurance. We're running a 20-minute kind of sprint race today, but simulating an endurance race in Ride 5. It's one of my favorite things to do in this game. So sweep onto the backstretch now and head back towards that pit complex. Up to 14th position off 20th on the grid, past a few bikes there right off the line. Squirrely under the brakes, so everybody tries to slow down enough, not run into each other. You get away with a little bit more than you could in real life here, but it's good. The AI like to run into you as well. All right, we'll rejoin the endurance circuit right after the Ford chicane into a double right-hander here. Missed the first apex, but want a good exit here, so get us onto the front stretch, throttle up, and rush down the front stretch at Le Mans. Get up the inside of another bike, absolutely awesome. Lay the bike over into Dunlop corner, get off the throttle, just let it roll on through, down a gear, a couple more for the chicane again. All right, able to make a pass there, work my way up the grid. So it's wet right now, but the forecast says, I guess, that it'll be clearing up at some point. And what's awesome about this endurance mode in Ride 5 is you do make pit stops. You add fuel, you change tires, so at some point we're going to have to change to slick tires. And as you may know from racing, any kind of endurance race, the strategy is everything about it. And I think this adds such an awesome element to motorcycle racing. I was very surprised when I found out that they actually do 24-hour bike races. And Le Mans is one of the biggest ones. I think the Bol d'Or, which is run at Paul Ricard, is the biggest, the most famous of the endurance bike races. Changed locations over the years, but Le Mans here, as you'd expect, one of the other crown jewels of the endurance championship that they run every year. Held up a bit through the chicane. I'm riding the Suzuki GSX-R750, I believe. I think I've got all the letters right. It's a very important bike in motorcycle racing history. It was one of those, as a rider sweeps up the outside, get him back up the inside here as we'll head into the final corner. Try to block that inside line just a little bit. It's one of these pivotal bikes that really changed a lot about motorcycle bikes, especially with racing, motorbike racing and everything. It's really that bringing that concept of adding lightness, that Suzuki somehow removed something like 20% of the weight and added another 15-20 horsepower and make it over 100 horsepower, which is quite a lot for a bike of this size at the time. Riding a 1985 model, and I think this bike won this race in 1985. It says a Suzuki won it. I don't know if it was this exact model, but in the spirit of that, it also dominated the Grand Prix circuit with Kevin Schwantz for a few years, and even won the TT in 1985 as well. So it's a really successful motorcycle. It's a neat one to ride and relive. We got a few other Suzukis out here, and then a whole bunch of other classic 80s bikes. Ride 5 has quite a few bikes from the 80s. Nothing, unfortunately, from the 70s. A couple bikes from the 60s, but the 80s is really where it picks up and has some interesting stuff to ride. All right, working my way up to 12th now. Bad exit there. I wasn't able to quite sweep out it well enough. Motorcycle racing, test your patience. You got to be so patient on the throttle, on the turn in. Let the bike kind of come to you and find its line. Not quite as easy as a car, I've found, to make quick adjustments. You really have to set yourself up well to go through a corner well. But I can just barely hold on. Hopefully can hold on for the entire 20 minutes here. It's starting to already get quite late in the day. It'll turn tonight quickly with how fast the whole race is, but it is really neat. One of the features that I really liked a lot in Ride 5, the dynamic weather, the dynamic day to night. First looked at the sim a few weeks back, right after it came out, and overall it hit really flat for me because it's very similar to Ride 4, but there are some fun things in it, and have a couple dozen hours at this point playing around with it. And I'll say have had fun with it. Wanted to come back to it. They've made some updates, make the AI a little bit better. They're not too bad here, although they'll still bowl you over as the rider in front gets it messed up or bogged down a little bit. He's going to get a better run. You can see it's really drying up now. Just under 14 minutes to go. So you can see the sun there peeking out. It's going to dry the surface just a little bit before the night sweeps in. There it is. So the thing I like about this mode, picking the pit stop strategy and things, and a great feature they've added is the fact that you can actually save during pit stops. So I'm just doing the quick 20-minute sprint endurance, if you want to call it that here, but you can do a full 24-hour race if you wanted to. Just cut up to the curb there, kick it back down a gear, hit the shift too early, the lights turn on, I'm going to get passed by another bike. Almost might be time for pitting. I think we could make it to the end. The fuel burn's accelerated as well, just to match with the overall speed of the race, so it burns off really quickly, but I think with 13 minutes to go we can make it. Maybe do one more lap before pitting. You can hear a whole bunch of bikes behind me. Everybody remains quite packed up. Such a short race. Coming to the final corner, but now fully in the dark. It's cleared up a lot in the sky. So slide down the front stretch though at night at Le Mans. It's absolutely awesome. You can hear the RPMs rise as you head into the corner. The radius on the tire gets smaller, which is why that happens. So you lean the bike over, so the RPMs actually do pick up, even though you're not really accelerating. It can really fool with you. Head down the hill. I think I might pit this time. See if we can undercut the other riders. Seems like it's getting pretty dry out here. It's run right onto the curbing, but it's not nearly as slick as it was before. Still looks a bit glossy though in the night lights. Come on down. This double right-hander. I think it's right up the inside of where Tête Rouge is. It's an interesting course. It's one Grand Prix cars famously raced here for 1 year in 1967, and all the drivers hated it. But like I said, I do think it suits bikes quite nicely in both MotoGP and this endurance stuff races here, amongst other racing, I'm sure. And it's one of the two tracks we have in Ride 5 that actually has this endurance racing on it, or is a part of that World Endurance Championship for motorcycles. Suzuki being the other one. It's got the famous 8-hour race there. It's unfortunate we don't have the other circuits though, like Paul Ricard. Alright, we'll come through then, final corner. We'll dive off into the pits. I can see somebody else doing it as well. And the AI will take over as we enter the pit lane. This is a fun little mini-game thing that you get to play as the rider will get its way into the pits. You kind of have to do a fast choice of what you want to do, but since it is drying out, we're going to put on some new tires. So we'll put on some soft front tire, medium rear tire, and then we'll wait for them to change the tires, and they will do some of the fueling as well, and we'll just tell them when to stop fueling. But since we do have about 10 minutes to go, 58% fuel, we might not need too much. I'll let it fill it just a little bit more, up to 70% maybe. Tell it we're done, and we'll hop back on the bike and head back out on the circuit. It's a fun little mini game. But it is a great feature and something that I think any game that has an endurance mode should have, and that it's a save race feature. You can rejoin or restart the race after a pit stop, after your last pit stop, whenever you want. So it really opens up the possibility of actually doing a long race since you'd obviously be doing it by yourself unless you've got some friends local to you. But it's been fun. I've done a couple longer ones just for myself for fun. And it totally makes this game different, because otherwise it's really that sprint racing and everything. And because the AI is a bit tricky to race wheel to wheel with, doing something like this where they spread out a bit more, especially in a longer race, ends up being a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun with this. Come on down to the chicane. So I can tell it's still a little slick out, but I've got much grippier tires now, so once they heat up, once the track dries out maybe a bit more in the morning sun, then we should be able to really turn in some good laps. I'm not too far behind this group in front, so we'll see if we can catch them. So tricky in the wet, though, in this sim. And definitely need all the grip I can get when I'm bike racing, as I really mess up the final corner there, get it out onto the curbing. And I do have all the HUD on. I love racing this without the HUD, but for these endurance races, you do got to see a little bit of what's going on. Here come a bunch of riders out of the pits. Just doing that one extra lap on the wet tires maybe cost them quite a bit. We'll pass a few riders. I was at 12th before the pit stop. To kick it down a gear mid-corner there. So they go up to 14th, so maybe actually lost out somehow through that whole cycle, unless there's more riders to pit. Just not quite enough grip to get on the throttle early. Using, of course, the steering wheel actually to control this, but I've got a whole video I made about how I've set up my wheel with analog paddles to simulate the actual throttle and brake on the handlebars. I think it does as good of a job as you could have without an actual, bike rig of some kind. I found it much more intuitive for myself than a controller. But I've heard the game as well handles pretty well on a controller if that's your speed of things. And if you haven't played a ride game before, I think this game still offers a lot. I think that initial disappointment was really just because it isn't that much different than Ride 4. And there were a lot of promises or hopes for things that would really set this game apart. So we'll really get on the brakes there. A little bit of contact with the rider in front. All right, squeeze the throttle on. We're really close now. They're all packing up. It's going to make the end of this race intense. To 11th, so picked up a spot through all the pit stops, but not a ton. It's neat to see the AI do a good job at pitting as well. It's pretty balanced as far as the speed on the track versus the pit times and everything, and I think the control of the AI in the pit lane helps with that. You can't really do anything much quicker than they can, but it is nice that it's relatively balanced. For those curious, I do have the AI on 75% only here. This is the stock GSX-R750 in 1985 version, so you could upgrade the bike more to make it faster, but this is just how it came right out of the dealership. One of the endurance modified bikes. You got to race a bike with a headlight, obviously, for endurance racing. But a really cool classic bike with a great story behind it and how much it really changed the game. Said Suzuki took inspiration from Colin Chapman when designing this bike and trying to make it as light as possible. They looked at all the parts that frequently failed, so flirt with the bike rider in front. Look at all the parts that frequently fail on motorcycles, make those ones strong, and then everything else that's rock solid, that doesn't fail, that doesn't have a lot of stress in it, that's where you save a lot of the weight. It's a pretty smart way to look at how you can make, say, weight savings while still making a safe bike, a bike that's going to last a full race, obviously last on the street as well. Performance figures like a little over 100 horsepower is not that much these days compared to the bikes that are out that you can buy, but for its time it really was a dramatic increase and just absolutely blew away the competition the first couple of years. back up the chicane there a little bit. Always have to back up the corners. Outbraking yourself is one of the hardest ways to make speed on a bike. It's really trying to get on the accelerator early. I've found that helps. And honestly, a lot like vintage car racing, where you maybe don't have as much lateral grip in those old tires and the old cars. So it's always about backing up your corners, getting on the throttle early to help turn the bike, turn the car. A lot of parallels in that way. All right, coming to the double right-hander, right on the rider in front now. If I can get a good exit here, maybe overtake him in the slipstream down the back section. There we go, that wasn't bad. All right, right in the slipstream. Fade up the inside, right against the grass. Maybe little elbows there. Road rash style. But that's how the AI do it. You can see the lights flashing on my dash from the bike behind. I love that. Those little touches make it feel really cool. Try to get a little distance on the rider behind. I think finally broke away from him there. Right out to the curbing on the outside. All right, so just 3 minutes to go, but we will do the extra lap. And once the time runs out, that'll be the final lap wherever the leader is. I think it's just starting to get lighter. I was just thinking, when is it gonna turn into morning? Long night though. So we'll work our way through the chicane. Right on the back of another rider, into the top 10 though, which is not too bad for myself. So tricky to stay just on the bike for 20 minutes, never mind try to compete for a win. I won't be competing for a win today, but might make it to the end here, right on the rear tire of the bike in front, slide up the inside into Museum Corner. I need to be careful now, the tires get worn out, and it's something that I really noticed in these mini endurance events, or the longer ones especially. It gets quite tricky towards the end of a run to put as much speed as you were. You kind of have to back off the bike a bit, let it come to you a bit more. But fully morning now, the sun has come back up, and I always love that time period in an endurance race when the sun finally comes out and we've made it through the long night. Oh, outbraking the bikes in front quite easily there. Just holding on to it, almost outbroke myself. Kick it down a gear. Messing up that chicane quite badly, but able to hold on to it. To be extra careful now to stay on the bike here towards the end. I did pit a little bit earlier than I maybe would have if the rain hadn't cleared up like that. So the tires are going to be a little extra worn here towards the end, and I did take that soft front, which I don't know if that was a bad decision. All right, onto the front straightaway in the sun now. Come across the line, minute 40 to go. Might be 2 laps to go, we'll see. Up to P8 though. Dip it into the first corner, Dunlop corner, just nice and easy. Still a bit too late on the first apex, able to gather it up for the second one. Closing up on the bike in front as well. There are a few other makes of bikes out here to ride, kind of randomly select similar bikes to race against. So I think this one in front is a Suzuki as well. But there's I think a Honda out here as well as a Yamaha from the time period, which is cool. Suzuki. Really taking different lines there, going for that over-under, not able to make it work. Pop of the exhaust in front. Alright, easy does it. I can feel the bike sliding quite a bit. It'd be so easy to dump it now. Of course, you can continue if you dump the bike, but so easily make the pass there. It's nice and easy on the brakes. Just not going to make the corner. Cut the chicane, let him pass. Avoid the penalty. You do get time penalties for making shortcuts of the course. Add up. 10th here, 10th there. At the end of the race can really change your finishing position. All right. Coming to the final corner, just a few seconds to go. Leader's pitting for some reason. I don't know if I'll be able to get by them. Alright, time has run out, but we got to do one more lap to get to the finish. Maybe you can get up into 6th now. fight for 10th turns quickly into one. Much further up the grid with bikes pitting right at the end of the race here. Into the chicane, up the inside. I can hear another bike behind me as well. Try to run away from him. Nice and easy on the brakes. It's one of the easiest ways to dump the bike is just locking a tire and having it slide out from you as you lean it into a corner. But a great exit there. Gonna get a run down a museum corner on the outside. Down a couple of gears, just nice and easy. Don't lean it over too much. Tires are really worn out now. Just trying to feel the bike out. Just being very, very easy with it. There we go. Get it onto the back section of the course. Ran a little wide there, but it's going to work out. As you can see, 5th place way up there, but it's going to be a little too far ahead. Just need to finish this out now, get through this fast chicane safely. Not so fast when you're bogged down like that. But I think ahead of my best lap time. The track's as dry as it's been now. Alright, we'll come sweep through the final section of corners. As another bike enters the pits on the final lap, maybe a mechanical failure or something, or just an oddity. We'll come through, sweep into the final corner to come across the line and finish this fun bike race with a 5th place. If you can't tell, for the last couple laps I was so worried I was going to dump the bike. It gets so hard to ride when you wear out the tires, and because I pit a lap or two earlier than I thought I was going to, it really affected things towards the end. But a lot of fun. It always feels like an accomplishment to finish a race without dumping the bike at some point in one of these games. But hopefully this enlightened a few folks about the GSX-R750 or endurance bike racing as a whole. You know, I was a little bit disappointed when Ride 5 came out, like I said originally and in the video I made, but I have been playing it here or there and thought it might be nice to do a follow-up of sorts. They've sorted out some of the weirdness with the sim. The AI do seem to work mostly correct on most circuits now, you know, and they're not the most compelling to race. They will knock into you a bit here and there, but it is possible to have some fun with it. And I do think this endurance mode, although it was also in Ride 4, with the added dynamic weather and the improved graphics for day to night and all of that, really makes a difference in this to make it a pretty fun experience. I think endurance bike racing might be my favorite type of bike racing outside of the TT and the road racing, of course. So I hope you enjoyed it. As I said during the running, if you're curious about how I do the controls for this, I did make a video about using a wheel in a bike sim. And it might sound odd at first, but I think it's a lot more controllable than using a controller, at least for myself. So let me know if you'd like to see more bike racing stuff. I think it could be fun to take these guys to Suzuki and do some running there, since they also do in real life. I've also been trying to practice and learn Dundrod and maybe do a video there at some point. So until then, thank you for watching. This is GP Laps, and I'll see you all again next time.